Hey, what's going on, Salt Strong Nation? Today I've got a tip for you on the top 3 areas to fish in incoming tide. So let's go ahead and get into it. All right, guys, so the first type of area that I like to fish for an incoming tide is just gonna be flats. So starting out at a low incoming tide especially, as soon as that water starts to get up on those flats, the bait starts to move up there. So as soon as you can get your boat or craft on those flats, the better, because you're gonna get there before a lot of the fish do. Now, the reason those fish really like feeding on an incoming tide on those flats is because, one, they don't have to move a lot. All that bait is getting pushed into them. So really where you want to focus on within those flats are going to be areas that have a little bit of structure, even troughs and potholes and things like that, because those fish will use all of those areas that just kind of displaces that bait a little bit to ambush it. And they really like feeding on those flats because it's more shallow of water and it's easier hunting for those fish. So next time you're starting out in kind of a low incoming tide, try fishing on those flats and I guarantee you'll see some fish up there. All right, guys, so the second place that I really like fishing on an incoming tide, especially once we're around that kind of mid-tide level and there's a little bit more water in there, I really like fishing points, and points specifically that have structure on them. So rocks, oysters, shell bottom, things like that, that's more of a hard structure. That's what I really like fishing for points on those incoming tides. And the reason why is because all of that bait and water is getting pushed into these areas, and what's happening is it's splitting off into a different direction. So those predators are lined up on both sides of that point typically, and what's gonna happen is that bait is gonna slow down a little bit because it's starting to realize that it's going to have to choose a direction, and it starts to get a little bit nervous. And that's really the perfect setup for those predators when they want to strike, because one, it slows the bait down, and two, when there's a high current flow, those points a lot of times will create small eddies and soft spots in the current, and that's exactly where those predators are going to be hiding. All right, guys, so my third and final point today of where to fish on an incoming tide, especially around higher water, since we've already gone through low and kind of that mid-tide cycle, is going to be fishing flooded structure, whether that's on flats or, near grass lines or even around docks and pilings and things like that. Flooded structure is definitely a key place to fish on a higher tide cycle and higher water, because areas like that is a lot of the places where bait tends to congregate because they feel a little bit safer. So predators naturally go towards those type of areas. So if you can find something on low tide or a shell mound that's not covered, once that water comes up, that will be an excellent place to go ahead and try when it's flooded with water. And if you can pair up some of those structured areas around creek mouths or places that bait is tending to go and try and get away from predators, as soon as that tide turns, a lot of times that's exactly where those predators will be, because as soon as that bait's starting to get washed out or go into some of these places like flooded areas and grass, that structure is kind of a checkpoint for the bait and the predators. So if you can cut them off before they get there or as they're coming back, I guarantee you're going to catch some fish. All right, guys, and for lures, what I really like to use on that lower portion of the tide cycle is going to be some type of shrimp imitation, something that we have like our Power Prawn USA. That's a phenomenal presentation at a low tide, especially on flats. Then as we start moving into, kind of those points and those areas that have a little bit higher current flow, I really like using bait fish imitations, stuff like the Bomber or the Slam Shady 2.0, maybe even on like a 1/4 ounce jig head, depending on the current. So that's a really good presentation kind of during that mid-tide and that current's ripping a little bit more. And then on the high tide, guys, I really enjoy using popping corks. I like using a popping cork with the Power Prawn underneath where you can pop it. It's just like a shrimp trying to escape, get into the grass and areas like that. So I really like that presentation. A lot of times you can get right up near the grass or on top of structure like we went over with that flooded structure, and that presentation will get nailed a lot of times. So if you need any of these lures, hooks, rods, reels, any of that stuff, definitely be sure to check it out at fishstrong.com. But guys, if you have any questions about this video or the tips that we went over, or if there's anything that you like to do specifically on an incoming tide, definitely be sure to leave them in the comments below and I'll be happy to get back with you. And if you're new to Salt Strong, just know that we're the best online club for saltwater anglers, especially if you're targeting redfish, sea trout, snook, or flounder. There's nothing else like it, and we actually guarantee that you'll catch more fish while saving time and money. We do this with our premium education, the exclusive insider community, and huge discounts on all the tackle you need. To learn more, go to saltstrong.com. Otherwise, we hope to see you again soon.